Welcome to the Theory of DFS podcast. I'm Jordan Cooper, the co-author of The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports, a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass teaching you all the game theory of DFS. Any sport, it doesn't matter. NFL, NBA, PGA, NHL, MMA, it doesn't matter. The same concepts apply to all sports. It's not a coincidence that most of the top DFS players are good at most of the sports. So figure out what they're doing that you're not in the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports course. Join with me as always, as sometimes. I mean, sometimes you're busy. Is Erik Beimfohr, who we'll get into later. That I may be coming over more to your side. You tend to play the higher stakes. So you're single entry. You play one lineup, maybe two or three. I tend to play the large field contests. Maybe I'm playing 20, 50, 80. This past NFL slate, I hand built. I played the mid stakes this past week, and I hand built 30 lineups. So I mean, I could have used the lineup builder, but I played the $40 multi entry, which is only like a 5,000 person field. I played 3 entries into the power sweep, which is a 153 max. I played the spies, those types of contests. I didn't play the slant. I didn't play the millie. I didn't play any. I played no contest that had a 5-figure field size. So it was all somewhere between 600 and like 5,000. And $2,500 worth of entries. I got 2,460 back. So kind of like that to me. That's a winning. That's kind of like okay. I didn't go broke or anything because I had like a 26th place entry into the power sweep that got me $1,000 for that. I built good lineups just with like a one. It's one of those you build good lineups and have one dud in them, or you don't have the same guys in the exact right spots. But would you consider for week 17? Typically, it's the highest variance week of the year, because of so many people sitting, motivation, who knows. Other than maybe one or two guys, like the chalk just smashed.
Yeah, it was the most unbelievable chalk fest I've ever seen in my entire life. I think I can't remember in it. Like even we've had it this year where we'll show up here on Tuesday and be like, oh, that was probably a bad week for you, right? Because the chalk did well, and I'll be like, yeah, it was. This week was that on steroids. The winning lineups in some of the higher stakes small field contests were cash teams. Empire Maker won the luxury box with his cash team. He has a screenshot on Twitter for people that don't follow him, which I'm sure most of you do if you're watching this, but with 1.5 million in winnings or something like that. Now he enters a ton of money, obviously 6 figures, but he was just shipping every tournament with his cash team. So that tells you a little bit about how well the cash team or the chalky plays did. So that was really bad for me, and I knew I was dead really early, so it actually was like a relaxing time. I just pivoted to a bunch of super low owned guys on the afternoon and prayed, and it only got it only got worse. But
did you close your laptop because you didn't have Marvin Jones?
I didn't have Marvin Jones, and I played Ty Johnson. Ty Johnson was the only early game player that I played. I did not play Marvin Jones. I did not play, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, any of that. And so, I could have, I guess, maybe prayed to min cash and played the Derrick Henrys and all that of the world, but that's not how I roll. So I pivoted off of pretty much everything, and it didn't go well. I got to celebrate, moving from like last place to 10th to last or whatever when Tyler got a 1% Tyler Lockett ceiling game. So that's always fun. Like it still gives you hey, I did something. I didn't finish last. I still got to watch something and enjoy it a little bit. I still thought it was fun. I played all the slates, which was fun for a last week. I thought it was a really, really interesting slate. I got it totally wrong, but I think to your point, it was in general the week 17s, and I thought this one was the same, are really high variance. And there were you want to talk about so many good plays and so many highly projected plays and so many high ceiling plays. I mean, the list was infinite. Obviously, there's 15 games, so that's part of it. But there was also just so many different guys stepping into opportunity or underpriced guys. Just talking about Tyler Lockett, right? Tyler Lockett at 5,800 2 months ago, we'd be laughing our asses off, but he's unowned, and rightfully so. But he's unowned on that slate. There's J.K. Dobbins runs for almost 200 yards and 2 touchdowns and isn't even on winning tournament teams. There were just so many good plays that I thought it was a really fun tournament week to kind of just take stands on some lower owned guys that are actually really, really awesome plays. It's just that kind of worked because a lot of those guys did well, right? J.K. Dobbins goes nuts. Plenty of other guys went nuts, but it's just when the 30, 40, 50, 60% owned guys they all go for 40, it doesn't really matter.
Right. I mean, that was the main issue. It's not that Derrick Henry got his median, or Jonathan Taylor got his median, or Marvin Jones got his median. No, they got their 90th percentile outcomes. They got their 80th. I mean, when Marvin Jones is 40 plus, and Henry is 40 plus, and Taylor is 40 plus, and Cousins has almost 40, and Jefferson has 30. I mean, you're naming the chalk construction. I mean, you're essentially like how do you get different from there? But this highlights the fact that it's extremely hard in large field GPPs to win on weeks like this, because you essentially need the optimal of all optimals. It's not just a matter of I have an 18-point score in my lineup. Yep, you're dead on a week. I mean, you need to have the perfect defense also, because everyone else has the other. You're going to see Jefferson, Jones, Cousins, Taylor, Henry, Laviska Shenault at 20 points at his price. I mean, where are you going to get the leverage? If that lineup wins, you're going to be tied 700 ways, in the top 500. I mean, but it's just weird that on a week where there's 15 games and a lot of unknowns, that the chalk all gets their ceiling. And because I was playing smaller field stuff, Eric, I tended to have chalkier lineups. Understand the fact that since I focus very heavily on either cash play or large field play, my biggest weakness, and I don't know if I call it a weakness, I'm probably still better than the average DFS player by a lot, is that because I don't focus on single entry and 3-max, my lineup construction techniques tend to be very, they could go too far in one direction or the other direction on a given week, where I'm I'm playing way too, I built this lineup and then I see the ownership in the SPY and I go, oh, this was a large field lineup. I think I got a little too crazy. And then sometimes I do it the opposite way. I look at the ownership and go, Jesus, maybe I have to swap my 2v2 in the late games, because this seems to be the chalk of all chalks. And so I'll get into it later that I may be focusing a little bit more on that. But yeah, for a high variance week, it's really odd. This is the week where if you were playing a 3K wide receiver, you could have picked 10 of them. And if you wanted to play none of the 3K wide receivers, you could have done other lineup constructions. They were 10 plus running backs that you could have easily played. There were games that you could have stacked that no one was playing, right? If you wanted leverage off of Taylor, I played some Rivers Hilton stacks, right? You do that. And then I played some Tannehill, A.J. Brown stacks, and you do that. And then you play Marquez Callaway over Ty Montgomery, right, in your flex or something for 3,200. So you get the cheap receiver that's the leverage off of the cheap running back. So most of my lineups looked like that. But then I filled out the chalk with the rest of it. So, I mean, my Tannehill, A.J. Brown stack, A.J. Brown did well. Tannehill didn't do well enough. But I also had Jonathan Taylor and Brandon Cooks in that line. I mean,
right.
So I'm still getting lineups that are 200 points. And 200 points on this past Sunday was a min cash, pretty much. But I'm just saying that out of my 30 lineups, I think I may have cashed, 18 of them, and then one for 1,000, and obviously that still doesn't make up for, I lost $40, but that's a survive in advance. Okay, I'm glad. I know I can't have the nuts, but I'm glad that I only lost $40 instead of, 1,500 or something on the week. But I think it's more of a byproduct of, it's not like I did better than you. You went for first place, and I tended to build lineups that may not have had as much first place win equity because I selected my core pool of players, and I went from that. I played Thielen, like in one lineup. I had Thielen instead of Jefferson, and that lineup would have came in like 8th place or something because the 20-point difference, because that was the leverage off of Thielen. So it's a Cousins Thielen stack with Marvin Jones, and then with Jonathan Taylor and Brandon Cooks and Sterling Shepard. I got him right. But it's just not all in the, like, no. Yeah. Then I have a lineup that it's all good except for I have Keelan Cole in there instead of Laviska Shenault. And it's like, okay, well, I went the other way and I didn't get that. So all in all, I know we're on to NBA now. Me and you are much more in NBA thought processes now, but and there weren't any complaints from last week. Last week we talked so much about NBA that I thought, I thought this was a football podcast. We didn't get any, so I'm assuming that you don't care. It's good enough for me, but I just wanted to highlight this past week 17 slate that it was quite odd that outside of maybe Isaiah McKenzie, like nothing like weirdly, and the funny part is you didn't even need him. Like in large field GPPs, like when some guy has 3 touchdowns and the DST also, and that guy is not even in the winning lineup, like how chalky of a week this was when that happens.
Yeah, it was seriously absurd when I don't even know how much he was because, like I said, I didn't see in lineups, but super cheap, right, in the 3Ks. When a 3K wide receiver, and he was playable, like he was very low owned and not like a priority for me in one team, but I thought he was in play, right? But that just tells you how many, like you mentioned, there was 10, 15 wide receivers sub. We start to expand it to sub 5K, right? You start throwing in Shenault and these other guys. There's like so
you had
many
Judy there. You had Patrick. You had
Judy smashed.
Gabe Davis, who got there on two catches.
But that's right. This list is like never end. They were all in play. You could make a strong argument for all these guys, right? And Isaiah McKenzie is the one who scores the most. And like you said, for the old shout out Peter Jennings for the old double dip action with the Bills defense that scored 1 million. You're like, and that didn't matter. It didn't. It didn't even matter. What do you mean the 3K guy scores 40 and you don't need him? How is that even possible? But it was, and every like leverage play, like you said, even if you played like just how you said, kind of like you did, mostly chalky, and then made those just those leverage points, right? Okay, play this chalk. All I got to do is get this one thing right. None of them worked. Literally none of them. Shenault caught 2 touchdowns, so it didn't matter for what the rest of the guys did.
Brown worked out, even though Henry got there also.
Yep. Yeah. So AJ Brown was the one that like worked, but also, it's like it worked, but it didn't, right? Because you didn't get points that Derrick Henry didn't get because he still got his own 40 something. Maybe you wanted to play both of them with Deshaun Watson.
The chalk lineup. What other slate does the chalk lineup have 2 250-yard rushers in it?
Yeah, exactly. With what 2 relatively cheap wide receivers that catch what Marvin Jones had 40. I'm trying to pull it up. Marvin Jones had 40. Brandon Cooks had 40. Jerry Jeudy had 38. I mean, it was a wild week. So I thought it was fun to like watch and sweat. Like I didn't have any sweats, but I thought it was fun to kind of watch. I was actually like, I don't know if I was sweating or anti-sweating, but watching the higher stakes tournaments as I see these people's cash teams and they're duped, right? All these teams are duped and they're winning tournaments with duped teams on week 17. On week 17, it was absolutely wild. So
sometimes I feel like envious of you when you play like only a couple of teams, a couple of lineups, because like last night in NBA, like if you're playing one, like I knew you played one lineup, and about 46 seconds into the Cavaliers game, Dante Exum gets injured, and then you're just on Twitter like it's family time, like because it's not like me, like I'm sitting here with I played 15 lineups, and he may have been in 2 of them. So it's like, okay, those two are dead. But now, okay, I got 13 lineups in contention. You're just like, what's on Netflix tonight?
Yeah, it was a new season of The Bachelor. Me and the wife watched the new season of The Bachelor, and but I can like casually enjoy the games then, right? So like I just like watching like Steph Curry, Luka, and James Harden
How
or
do you
whatever.
do it? How do you casually
Just
watch this shit?
just toss them. We just toss them on the side screen, and it's on there. And the Warriors are kicking the living shit. So now I'm like not even watching because the Kings the Kings are so bad that the Warriors are beating them by 40 or whatever. So now we're just watching The Bachelor. It was actually a fun night, but that is maybe refreshing. It's a weird balancing act between it can be frustrating, right? There's plenty of frustration times where like if I played another team and I played that 2v2 that I was thinking about, I would have got it. But like, there's a lot of other, downstream impacts with playing multiple teams, and, then you're playing probably more money, or you're playing different contests, whatever. I do think I find it, it's beneficial for mental health sometimes to just have the one team. And if it works, it's great. You're into sweating that. And if it doesn't work, yeah, pop on Netflix and get it again tomorrow.
Yeah, but if you play cash games, at least you always have a sweat.
Yeah,
For the most, I mean, if you consider, I mean, like if you're still sweating a cash line, you're still sweat. I mean, there's still something going on. But the point that I'm making is that like I'm not playing for the sweat. I'm playing to make money, and the sweat is the entertainment. I mean, I at least I could admit that. Like NBA will come on at 7:30 tonight. And there'll be a 5-game slate. I'll have my GPP lineups, my cash lineups on 3 sites, and I may not put on a game. I may put on DK Live and just see the plays come through, and then be in the Roto Grinders Discord. Like, to me, that's the entertainment. Like, there's more productive shit I could do with my time, because what can I control? Like, outside, obviously in NBA, shit happens and projections change, and you have to do late swaps. And okay, I get it, but like last night with the Warriors Kings game, like once that game locked, it's like, is there a purpose in me even like from a DFS perspective? Like, the slate is done. Whatever the results are, the results are. Whatever, if Rashawn Holmes fouls out, like I could find that out tomorrow. I mean, like it really doesn't matter. So at least I'm able to admit that, like, yes, I'm doing it for the entertainment. Like, to me, like I'm watching the game. I'm looking at DK Live. I'm looking at my lineups, and that's the version of me watching a show on Netflix like that. But ultimately, if I should be, if I was a complete nit, Eric, I would just shut off my computer, or if I'm going to sit in front of my computer, I should be like analyzing some data for tomorrow or something, or do something more productive, or work on something. Rather than, because that's the equivalent of watching TV.
I think you kind of brought up a good point. Like, that is the entertainment. Like, we're talking about on this podcast, and there's like infinite amounts of content and stuff out there about making, who to play in DFS, or how to make better team strategy, game theory, whatever. And all this stuff is clearly important. You and I are talking about it every week, every day. But like at the end of the day, if you're not like enjoying it, like maybe like for me, the entertainment is like legitimately watching the games. Like that, I do enjoy those few hours where, okay, I put all this work in, let's see how it plays out. Like you're pulling up DK Live, or sitting in Discord, or talking to your buddies on a text thread or a Slack or whatever. Like if you don't have, if you're not like getting some sort of enjoyment out of it, like once that stuff is going on, I'm not sure that you'll be able to last necessarily in like a daily sport like NBA. So there needs to be some like payoff, right? Not like necessarily financial. Hopefully there will be financial, but just like in terms of a life payoff, right? Like you're putting in all this work and you're doing something. Of course, this is to make money, but like if you're not getting that, right? Let's lay on the couch and like enjoy this little bit of time that I put in, because we're putting like, I mean, at least I'm putting in a lot of hours throughout the day, not only like producing content or just thinking about the stuff, right? You could just be like eating lunch, or we talked about like sitting on the shitter entering contests into FanDuel, right? You're putting a lot of time and effort into it. So I do think, just taking a step back and at least making sure that you're getting some enjoyment out of it is pretty important.
Right, and I enjoy sweating the game, so I've no shame admitting it. The NFL Red Zone, 1 o'clock, let's go,
Mm-hmm.
let's see what's going on. Oh, that play, this play, but I mean, I don't get as emotionally invested. Like as like whatever happens. It's a slot. It's like the slot machines. Like
Mm-hmm.
most people don't realize that like once you hit the button, like a computer, a random number generator, whatever, their system, like it already knows what's going to happen. Like it's just like that 15 seconds that it plays out on the screen or whatever. It's just a formality to entertain you. Like it could just say, "Imp, you lost. Imp, you lost. Imp, you lost. It's $2. Imp, five." But then obviously you're not getting the entertainment value out of it.
Yeah.
But I'm not, I'm so the touchdown get called back. Oh, what bad luck. I'm like, I can't control that.
Yeah.
I think it's very important. You can't do it 100% of the time. I admit that. There are plenty of times that I'm close in GPP. I'm like, can you just get a fucking hit? Right? Like all I need is a guy on base right now. And a lot of times it's not even that guy. It's like I need someone to get on base so my guy could get up next inning. Like I just want a chance at another at bat because I'm like 6 points behind, and it's like if this 7 hitter could get up again, like maybe I have a chance to win this GPP.
You're cheering for like the pitch is inside. You're like, lean into it. Don't get out of the way. They'll take one for the team.
Right, you're not even my player. I just need the guy 2 batters from you to get up, and it's one out in the inning, and it just like get on base, please. Can someone? But I mean, in the other way, I'm more, if you want to call it emotionally invested, and when it's closer to the top, but like on the bottom or cash lines, like I can't control the out. Like I can't control the outcome. So I just if you're playing DFS seriously, I know Eric, you like saying we're all humans, right? I try to act as little as a human as possible, right? If you see me on shows, a lot of times I'm not that much of a human, but like if I can't control it, like there's no point in getting upset about it. There's no point in lamenting over it. If intellectually, if you ever get into the mode of like you're being angry about something because that happened in a sports game that cost you money, like your decision was made at 1 o'clock. Like once the game locked for the football game at 7:30 or whatever for the basketball game, like it's the slot machine playing out. If you were to fall asleep and wake up 3 hours later after the game is done, it's no different than you watching the game at the same time. So, although you're missing out on the entertainment factor of it, like if you think in those terms intellectually, you're less likely to tilt. And to me, tilt leads to playing bad. Like that's how I am able to do it inside of my head. Like I try to look at things intellectually and go, yeah, I'm kind of like fucking Dante Exum just gets injured 1 minute into the goddamn game, and he's sitting in my fucking cash lineup with -1.5, and I have like $1,500 on the line in my cash lineup. Like I'm dead. Turns out I wasn't, but whatever. Turns out Rashawn foul trouble saved me yesterday. But like the first like 20 seconds, you're like motherfucker. Really? Fucking the first minute of the goddamn slate and I'm dead? But then at the end of the day, you go, well, what happens if I never turned on the game, I didn't watch DK live, and I open up my app at midnight. I would have saw -0.5. My lineup would have made money, right? And I would have just looked and go, Jesus, how did I get that lucky? What happened to Dante Exum, right? And obviously, I would know that he got injured, but like the emotion wouldn't be there anymore. I can't control that. Like there's nothing. I could just look at the results afterwards. You could have just taken the slate, said, I'm not going to look at my lineups, right? You had Ty Johnson and no Marvin Jones. You could have said, I'm not looking at my lineups until 4:15, right, Eastern, but 10 minutes before the late game's locked, because obviously you could make swaps and stuff. And if you didn't know any, like you would just look right then and go, oh, Marvin Jones, too bad, But you wouldn't have spent the last 3 hours like cursing the wind that Chalk Marvin Jones goes off, and then maybe without you realizing it, that generates in your head that anger, that emotion, and it affects your late swap decisions at 4:15. And maybe you're now playing bad. This happens in poker all the time. There's a bad beat, you get two outed on some big hand, and then people just like steam it off and go, I'm going to raise the next hand with any two cards. Like they have to get it back. I have to get back to even as quickly as possible. And now now you're making poor decisions. So whenever I get into that mode, I try to intellectualize it by I can't control it and it'll affect my decisions. So just tomorrow's another slate, right? Right?
Yep.
And I'm not thinking in terms of, oh, I'm dead, let me enter the showdown with $1 million, right? People do that also, right? Oh, I'm dead. Oh, I'm dead. Let me at the Kings Warriors showdown. It's coming up. Yeah, I could play 100 entries into that. Like, that's how you lose your money. That's how you lose your bankroll. I mean, maybe I'm a little too much of a nit, but like to me, that's not nitty behavior. That's smart behavior.
Yeah, I think it's also something, and maybe some people can't, but it is also something that kind of a skill you can and should hone over. It might take a while, right? Like, I mean, I know I have, like you said, tilted, and then you either lead into worse decisions, whether they're bad swaps or entering bad teams on the same night, or letting it carry over to future days and then making bad teams, and then maybe making more bad swaps, right, et cetera, and it starts to snowball on you. But it's a really important skill to kind of hone that. Like last night, I will say, when it first happened, right? I watch the games usually in my basement. I walk down, I go to turn the TVs on, and like get the game up, right? Like the moment Exum got hurt, like he's coming around a pick and roll, he starts limping and goes to the bench. Like I had just got the game on the TV, and you're just standing there like. Well, and like, if you're watching it, you knew right away that it was pretty serious, that he was done. So like you said, yeah, less than a minute in, and you are like, I don't think I would describe myself as pissed, but it's definitely you're frustrated. Like, God damn it, I just spent all day doing this, and now I'm dead. So you take a second, gather yourself, and then I'm like, all right. Let's see how the next few minutes of these games play out. Who's popular, who's isn't, and let's talk now. Let's think about what swaps I have to make. And last night was really interesting, actually. Whether you had Exum or not, but like if you had Exum, like I almost battled back. The Raptors failed way too miserably for me to make it back, but I thought Jason Tatum and Peyton Pritchard were two of the best plays on the slate, and I was deciding whether I was just going to pivot off or not. And I decided to stay on them, but then basically just essentially stack that game up. And Kelly Olynyk became available to us when that lineup came out. I wish I had waited a little bit because Willie Cauley-Stein also became available, which might have put me over the edge if I was able to get both of them. But nonetheless, Kelly Olynyk became available, and he was very low owned because we didn't know going into the slate that he was going to be a thing, a strong play at sub 4,000, and everybody had planned for the Pistons, right? So anyway, whether you have Exum or not, you just start to see these things open up, and as long as you can keep a clear head, right? It could be something simple as foul trouble, right? Maybe you played Andre Drummond in the early game, and the big dumbass that he is, he gets 2 fouls in the first minute, so you're tilting that now, right? Well, if you're not able to kind of, you're allowed to be frustrated, but if you're not able to kind of control that and still be able to make the right decisions, like you said, you won with Dante Exum, and I didn't quite get there, but it's certainly possible that I could have, and I'm sure there's other people that did win with Dante Exum.
Well, you didn't win first. I mean, I think there's a very big difference that once you saw that Dante Exum was gone with -1.5 points, you're not building your lineups thinking that you're going to win first place in a GPP.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, how do I get to the min cash line?
Yep.
Now, and obviously the min cash line in your contests are going to be different than like double ups or head to heads or whatever. So I understand the fact. I think too many people go on tilt and then they give up. They go, well, close laptop. It's like, well, you could still min cash. Like, I know you can't win the GPP. I know you can't. And why don't you try to get a 1.5x? I mean, if you get it 5% of the time, I mean, fine, but at least do that. And then you have the opposite, Eric. You have the people that overreact. Right? You have a lot of people, I know on the Gilcast. They talk about it a lot. 5 minutes into a slate, you can go into the Roto-Grinders Discord for any NBA slate. You know, if Drummond's chalk and he has 2 fouls in the first minute, the number, it's literally 5 minutes into the slate, and people are talking about, do we need to swap? Do I need to swap up? You know, they have 80% Drummond, right, in their cash lineup or something. It's like, well, I need to pivot now off of Chalk Curry, or I need to pivot off of that. It's like, dude, it's 5 minutes into the fucking slate. Like, you don't know anything. You don't even have much information yet, other than Drummond has 2 fouls, and maybe he'll end up with the snowflake. Oh my God. But he's 70% owned. So like maybe that's fine, right? Or if it's a low owned guy, like let's say like you're playing a low owned guy that happens. Now you know that, you know, you're negative leverage over of everyone because you have the 3% owned guy with the 0. But you don't have to make that decision immediately. Right? You don't have to immediately jump right into, I'm frustrated, I'm just going to change everything around. And it's quite possible that the lineup that you built already has enough leverage. Like in that scenario where you're playing a 70% owned Drummond, but you're playing D'Angelo Russell and he's 5% owned over some other Zach LaVine who's 40% owned. And you're like, well, I got to switch stuff around. It's like, no, if D'Lo puts up 60, you're good, right? And if D'Lo puts up 60 and LaVine, the Bulls get blown out and LaVine has 28 points, yes, you're not going to win. You have a 0 in your lineup, but you min cash. So like, if the Bulls game isn't on for an hour and the Wolves don't play till 10 o'clock at night, like it's 7:15. Like, at least calm yourself down. Don't be as frustrated, and then look at things more objectively. Look at other people's lineups in the contest, and then make a much more informed decision. You don't have to make these swaps until what? If it's an 8 o'clock game, you still got another half an hour, 40 minutes, right? You don't have to make the decision now. So don't be like the poker players who lose a big hand and then start fucking raising every hand. Like, no, you could just walk away from the table. Just walk away. You'll lose around the blinds. If you're playing cash games in poker, you're like, who cares, right? You say, I'm sitting out for half an hour. Grab yourself a sandwich, sit back down and play well. Play strong, go home, don't go home, you know, like that type of shit. So you could do the same thing in DFS. Now you don't have to make this decision for half an hour. So don't sweat it. News happens, right? So, oh, this guy's out 20 minutes before lock. Like, and let's say you're using someone else's projections. Like, do I have to make the decision right now? I know just from my common NBA knowledge, right? As we discussed last week, I'm not an idiot. I'm like, oh, if this guy's out and this guy's in, most likely it benefits these two people. Like, how much does it? Maybe I have a scale. Like, is he going to be projected really well or just well? Is he going to be projected slightly better or not really much at all? But at least I could plan and go, okay, well, maybe I switch this to this. But I got 20 minutes. Right? I got 20 minutes. Even if I'm playing 100 entries, I got a tool. I got a rebuilder. Right? I can rebuild all my lineups in a matter of 30 seconds. So and upload it and everything. I need 60 seconds to do that entire thing. Once I find out that so-and-so, has an 8x median projection and I should be jamming him into every lineup, like, I'll get that. So like the stress level. People talk about the NBA DFS being stressful, which it's much more stressful than any of the other sports, because especially you can't get bailed out in NBA, right? If someone gets into foul trouble and loses 8 minutes of their rotation in the first half, Like the likelihood of them putting up a flame emoji is quite low. Like no one's hitting a 25-pointer in the second half, right? Like, I'm going to do the under the back and through the legs from half court, and I somehow get more fantasy points for that. You don't get that in NBA. At least NFL, you always have hope. Like, all I need is one big catch. Like, that could happen at any time.
Yep.
In NBA,
Yep.
in NBA, you get 3 fouls in the first half, that the guy gets benched. Guy just doesn't play. We had that with DeLon Wright yesterday, just somehow out of the
Yep.
blue, just out of the rotation. Even though it's a back-to-back, and Derrick Rose is just taking all the minutes. Old-ass him is playing on the back-and-back, and he's sitting there at 16 to 20% ownership. And I know that if you had him, you're like, where the fuck's DeLon Wright? It's what happened? And even the beat reporters are like, we don't even know, right? But at the end of the day, like, Eric, we've said it on multiple podcasts. We know how much variance there is in a single day's games in DFS, and we still underestimate the variance. So the normal person is the average player thinks there's much less variance in sports. So when things like this happen, like, I understand why people go fucking apeshit over, like, how unlucky am I? How could I have predicted this or whatever? And we tend to come at it from always expect the unexpected. And even then, it's typically even more unexpected.
Yeah, imagine if you're if you were a new player or somebody came to you and Discord, and this was their first day, and they rostered Dante Exum and DeLon Wright and Rashawn Holmes on a team, right? All quality plays, right? Like, all before lock, you'd have been like, "Yep, cool, looks good." Well, one guy you got to experience all the pains of, other than a late scratch. You didn't get a late scratch, right? But DeLon Wright was basically
he was on the road to a
DNP
DNP if it wasn't for Killian Hayes getting injured.
Yeah, he would basically have been a late scratch. It was the same thing, right, as a late scratch. He doesn't play. Guy gets hurt in the first minute, and then guy gets in foul trouble. Like, there was everything, Or maybe you played Sadiq Bey, right, who was another chalky option, and you got to watch him go stand in the corner and watch everybody else do stuff for 35 minutes. Grab a couple rebounds. I think he made 2 shots, whatever, right? Like, there's so much, and I'm not like I played Dante Exum. All these other guys were whatever. They're fine plays. I don't really care about the specifics of the play, but to your point, like, would I have ever guessed any of those outcomes? Like, if you made me predict that, hell no. Like, there's no way to know that DeLon Wright isn't going to play. There's no way to know that so-and-so is going to get hurt. There's no way to predict foul trouble. There's no way to predict blowouts, no matter what some people might tell you on Twitter. Like, it is what it is. And even if you can predict some of that stuff, that's not apples to fantasy points. Guys can get in foul trouble and still crush. Guys can get in foul trouble and be horrible, right? Andre Drummond could get those. We've all been there. Probably we've all been there with Andre Drummond. But we've all been there with someone gets 2 fouls in the first 2 minutes. Well, I needed him to play 36, and he's going to, we're screwed. Well, maybe the coach plays him a little more in the second half. Maybe he goes nuts, right? Drummond does that sometimes and scores 20 DraftKings points in 5 minutes, and all is well, right? But there's just it's so wildly unpredictable that, like, last night was actually, we talk about it on these outlining slates that, like, are really show a specific kind of aspect of DFS, and the Sunday one and last night, Sunday football and last night's NBA were like total opposite ends of the spectrum, but one being so wildly not non-variance when it comes to chalk, the chalk plays, and then last night being all these examples of these crazy things that we could never ever predict. And going back to our kind of like, how do you handle it thing? Like, you just have to be able to, keep a calm mind. And even if you're not staying calm, like, I don't really give a shit. I was frustrated when Exum got hurt. I probably wasn't calm right away, but you take a step back. We went and started cooking dinner. So I'm watching the alerts come in, and oh shit, a Linux starting, and I'm just processing. I got to make some swaps, right? So let's start chopping up some vegetables, and okay, I could swap to him. I could do this. I don't have, like you said, I don't have to make those decisions right away, but you just have to kind of handle all that. And it was a lot last night, and it was it was the opposite of a lot on Sunday, but we've outlined it a little bit, like with Alan's article and with some of these different things, but it is like partially an emotional game. Some of the guys will be like, oh, they're, I'm just doing the math, and you'll say it sometimes, right? They're just names and stuff on a spreadsheet, which is true, but we're also the humans clicking in those names on a spreadsheet. And if you can't handle like those little things well and still make plus EV decisions, I think that's something that maybe you should try to like practice, right? Because you can learn it. I wasn't always good at it, but you can learn to, okay, I lost Exum. How do I try to recover a couple bucks, right? And wrap your head around, how do I try? Because if you do that, you've outlined it before. If you do that, 5 times a year, you know how much money you can make back? How much of your bankroll you can make back if you successfully recover from a Dante Exum scenario just a few times a year. So as long as you can wrap your head around, you have a new goal. The goal has now changed. It sucks that new goal is not winning $1 million, but now go attack the new goal.
Right. I feel like you need to get a shirt. We need to, those keep calm expressions. I want to have one for DFS. Maybe get RotoWare to do it. Keep calm and blame variance.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and keep calm, and something about swapping. We need something about swapping. Keep calm and and pivot. Keep calm and pivot off the chalk or something. Yeah,
well, just okay, you lost today. Just blame it on variance, right?
Yep.
That's the easiest thing to do. Just blame it on variance. You can't do that, but the thing is, you can't do that for so long because then your bank account shows that you're not a good player. I mean, like at some point, it's not variance. Right, 5-year sample size. Most likely, it's not variance. And talking about variance, I know this is what I do every year. Normally on Twitter, I post my roto tracker and everything, and I've posted it throughout the year anyway. So I mean, I'm transparent enough. If people, oh, did you win? People always, I post all my shit transparently. I'm gonna go over some of it. Eric, you're gonna share some of your results. We're 2 different types of players. So and the goals for both of us are completely different from one another. That's why there's no better. I always like who's better than one another. Like what does that matter? Like I don't need to be the best poker player. I need to make X amount of money. If that's my goal, then that's my goal. Who cares? So I'm getting messages now. So in RotoTracker, I've already updated everything from last year. People are going to be shocked at my past year's results. I think. I think Eric, you're not going to be. I think any good player is not going to be. But I think most people out there are going to be shocked. So over the course of I've played for 5 years, 3 months, something like that. I don't believe years are just arbitrary periods. Right? Like in poker, it's just one long poker game. If you had a big win on December 29th versus January 2nd, what does that really matter? I had a bad year last year, but I had a great year this year. What? Really? A 3-day difference? That's what I mean. I take a look when I judge my play, I'm looking at more of an average over time. So an average, just like in poker, you do an hourly rate. So yes, tonight I lost $1,500, but my hourly rate goes from $28 an hour to now $26 an hour because of that one little dip. So I'm still a $26 an hour type of player. Now, obviously, if it dips more, your hourly rate over time dips down more. But you're not judging just based on per session. You win 10,000. I mean, DFS is the perfect example of this. That your year can be made on 1 or 2 days. And that's and you're playing for that. That's literally why you play. I'm gonna build all these. I'm gonna roll this 500-sided die getting 30,000 to 1 odds. And hopefully I'm getting great plus EV, and hopefully one of these 365 rolls, I get that big payday, but it still means you're the plus EV. I just always want to highlight that as far as like years and weeks and months. Like all those things are just like, I know, Eric, you're the one. It seems like on this podcast, I'm the one that like I'm trying to view everything like a robot, and you're the one that's like well, we are human beings, so it's like it's understandable that we try to put things into certain boxes and compartmentalize and think in these terms. But I always try to be as objective as possible and go like, well, what does it matter that I had a good month or a good 2-month period? It's like what was my goal playing DFS? My goal in DFS has always been, in DFS in general, to make $50,000 to $75,000 a year, which is essentially like a job. Just like, yes, am I rich? No. Right? But do I have to go sit at a fucking office and, get the TPS reports ready and do, no, I don't have to do any of that shit, right? I get to be in my pajamas, talk to people I like, talk to smart people that I like, podcast, play some DFS, watch some basketball, and tilt with people in Discord. Like, that's my life. I'm perfectly fine. $50,000 to $75,000 a year. And over the past 5 years, I've made $366,430. It's $1,992,361 worth of entry fees for that $366,430 profit for an 18.39% ROI. Now, over the course of 5 years, that's an average of a little over $70,000 a year. So based on that, if I just woke up, if I opened up my DraftKings app in October of 2015, I deposited $400. And let's say someone hit me on top of the head and said, you're going to know everything that happened. You're going to play. You're going to know everything that you ever did. And then you're going to wake up today on Tuesday, January 5th or whatever. I don't import my past 4 days, but whatever. Woke up on New Year's Eve, 2021, and said, well, you now have $366,430. Would I be happy? I would say, fuck yeah, right? Okay? Right. So, like, that's in the grand scheme of things. But most of this comes from big GPP wins. I mean, that is what I play for. That at least what I have been playing for, as well as cash games. Cash games pay for a portion of the GPP entries, right? Essentially, I'm generating a small percent in ROI to like cover GPP losses every day, so my swings are not like dramatic. So over the course of time, in 2006, I can't count 2015. I only had $4,900 worth of entries. I mean, I was just starting to play. I was playing $1 soccer games. So even in 2015, I made $1,475. In 2016, I made a little over $43,000. 2017, I made a little over $68,000. 2018, I made about $194,000. But of course, that includes, a $100,000 NBA GPP win. 2019, I made just under $53,000. But most of this money comes from a $20,000 win, a $50,000 win, those types. And then you have to pay for all the losses because you're losing a couple $100 like every slate. You play GPP, every single slate. And then you still have to keep up your cash games because if you start taking a dip in cash games, now you're getting into some downswings. So over that course, like if I take a look at my graph, like I've had like in the beginning, I didn't have many downswings because I wasn't playing that high enough volume because I'm playing dollar and quarter arcade stuff. A big downswing is like $800, right? I mean, like that's not that bad. But like in 2000, I'm looking at my graph in 2017, it looks like during MLB season, I went from 63 total profit down to 54 over a time period. So that's like a $9,000, almost $10,000 downswing. But then I won again. And then I go down and there's another couple $1,000 downswing. But then coming into January of 2018, obviously now, since I'm making more money, I'm moving up in volume. So I had a downswing from, 110,000 down to 103,000. So that's a $7,000 downswing. But then I recovered from that. Then I have another one that's like about 5,000 downswing. And then I have two big wins. That was a 100K NBA win, a 50K NFL win. But right after that, I go from 329 down to 306. So that's like a $25,000 downswing. But I recover from that a month later. Then I go from 327 down to 314. So that's a $13,000 downswing. But I recover from that. And I recover from that twice. Then I go on another one in 2019, 358 down to 333. So that's a $25,000 downswing. But I recover from that and then some. Then I get up to a certain point, I get up to 370. Then I go on a downswing down to 338. So that's like a $32,000, a $22,000 downswing. And then we get into 2020. And 2020, that first downswing that I just said, that occurred in the beginning of 2020. And then I had another downswing at the end of 2020. In NFL this past year, other than the $50,000 win, I was 6-11 on weeks in cash games, and I'm playing a decent volume when it comes to NFL. Yeah. So the difference between going 9-8 is about break even, right? Because of the rake. Going 8-9 is a small loss. Going 7-9 is a loss. Going 6-11 is a fairly, if you're playing like $8,000 in volume and you go 6-11, like that's a $25,000 down. That's the difference. If I went the other way, the difference between 6-11 and 9-8 is like $25,000, right? If I went the other way, if I went 11-6, it's a difference of losing $25,000 to winning $15,000 or something like that. So those two downswings, combined with, I'll talk about my foray into something else during COVID that cost me money. So based around that, most people, if you look on Twitter, Eric, right? Most people would look at me and go, "Oh, they remember two things that I did screenshots for. I won third place in the Premier League Soccer King of the Pitch on DraftKings, right? And they remember the slant win for $50,000, right? That's what they would remember. They don't know that I had a $20,000 downswing at the beginning and end of the year, right? So they'd look and they go, "Oh, how much did you make in DFS this year?" Right? Also knowing that we had a 3-month period where we had no fucking sports, right? Yeah. I couldn't make my sample. I didn't have 3 months that are eliminated from my ability to get a big payday. So based on that, I would assume, Eric, what do you think people would assume my net on 2020 would be? What do you think the average person, if you just take a look at screenshot culture type of thing?
What did you say? I'm sorry. What did you say the King of the Pitch one was for? How much?
That was like for 10,000.
Okay. Well, so I'll add a little context because in my experience, people will add on more money so if you have $60,000 of big wins, screenshot worthy wins, right? People will be like, "Okay, I saw those for 60. So you had to make 80 or 100, because you kept winning all these other times."
Right. They don't do the other direction. It should be the other direction.
When it should very clearly be, no, what do you mean? Those big wins paid for all those other losses. So it's obviously a lower number, but people will say, "Okay, I saw him with 60, so he probably made 75 is what the normal person will guess.
Right. But and I know, and any other good player knows that no, you're lose 90% of the time. The big wins make up. My whole thing is that if I could win big twice in a year, that meets my goal. So what happens if I only win once big in a year? Well, that doesn't necessarily meet my goal. I also during COVID, right? Because basketball shut down March 6th, and then we didn't get nothing back. I wasn't playing esports or anything.
Either.
Then we got Bundesliga soccer back, and then once soccer comes back, I'm good. You can't win big in soccer. I'm playing cash games in soccer, so that came me back. So I started playing MMA and PGA when they came back. But remember, I'm a large field GPP player. If you're playing PGA large field, that's high variance shit. And in MMA, it's a winner take all contest, right? In MMA, basically it's like a showdown and have a lineup that's not duplicated, right? That's how you get a big win. So over the course of me I would consider it to be a flaw. I was not smart. I said at the time of no other sports and MMA being the only thing that was going on, I was playing way too high risk. Meaning that it's like me entering $1,000 into showdown contests. Like, dude, you have to when you're doing that for NFL showdown for the large field stuff, you have to like know that your 1,000 can be zero in a second. Like that's like
Yep.
if you don't bink, you're going to be negative ROI. But I'm like, there's nothing else going on, so I'm good at building non-duplicated lineups, or it's less duplicated lineups, so I should be able to beat this MMA thing. I just need a large enough sample size to get there. Well, I didn't have a large enough sample size to get there, so lost 10,000 in the process. So that there goes that. So now you've added up 2 downswings, and me going like, let me take a shot at MMA by playing large field instead of just playing small field contests and minimizing my risk without trying to get the $1 million or 500,000 or whatever. The total is plus minus is for the whole year is 69.22 for a 1.44% ROI. Didn't I say before that most people, you're not, the sharper players aren't, would be shocked at like $7,000. That's it, right?
Yep.
And especially given my past results over the other years, like well, I had 2 binks in 2016 in relation to the bankroll size. 2017, 2018, and 2019, like every single year, 2. I mean, I've had medium stuff in there thrown in, but every year 2, and there you go, 48, 58, 193. I mean, but that 193 makes up for like 3 years worth of shit. Like right. I could go through I could blame variance for a year, right? That's perfectly fine, and for 9 months technically. So to you, I'm not making to me this isn't excuses. This is normal. Right, but to the average person, they're like, "Well, this guy sucks now." Obviously in 2020, you're doing something wrong that you only binked once, and you bled money away in 2 different downswings, and it's like no, this is normal. We're looking at an arbitrary time period of January 1st, 2020, to December 31st. If I could win 50,000 tomorrow, and what does it? Just because the only thing that matters is the tax year, right?
Fucking taxes,
right?
Yep.
So like I was able to even out my exposure on 2 sites, so that was my goal the last week of the because I don't play that much on FanDuel, but I happen to be down 1,500 on FanDuel, so I'm like I can't carry over the losses, so I'm gonna play more money on NBA and FanDuel to try to get above 1,500, and if I'm gonna lose, I want to lose on DraftKings. Right. It's when I don't want to lose, but if I'm going to lose, I'd rather win enough on FanDuel to get above the loss line. And even if I trade the 1,500 on FanDuel for a loss of 1,500 on DraftKings, it's like I've made $400 by not paying. Like that's like $400 in tax money I don't have to pay, right? Just by doing that. So like there's an instance of that, but I feel, Eric, as a sharper player, $7,000 over the course of a year is like still in the top like 5% of all DFS players, correct? Because most are lifetime losers. But I feel awful.
Yeah,
I feel like I maybe I threw $15,000 away playing MMA and PGA in the middle of the year. I feel like in January I don't think I was even playing NBA well. I think I was making mistakes. I was overcompensating different ways. I may burn through $5,000 to $10,000 just on that. Like not the total downswing, but just like there was a leak. I was just not in the right mindset. And then I talked to a lot of NFL sharp NFL players this past year. Many did not have a good season. So like I'm not if everyone's having a great season, I'm sitting here with my dick in my hand. That would be a different story. So, like, yeah, if I could have turned like 1 or 2 different weeks around in cash games, that would have been another. I mean, that would have been the difference of losing 12,000 or so and winning 12,000. So, like, in the span of like a couple of slates, like, without even a big win, and then not donking it off in PGA and MMA, this number could have easily been like 35,000 or something, right? Could have easily been that. And that still would have been a low number for my past years, but still like, respectable for what I play. But Eric, the thing that I'm ashamed of, this is why I feel awful. And I don't know, you may be able to, out of all people, maybe you'll be able to relate to this. Uh, that this means that over this past year, this was the first year that I made more money producing content than playing DFS. To me, that's the thing that's the thing that makes me feel awful. Because because like that, no, I play like that's the content is that's the make sure I get the rent paid type of money, right? This is my primary income, but like this is the first year from 2016 to 2019 where the content accounted for more income than the play, and you could understand why I feel awful about that.
Yeah, it's a bunch of different factors, and like I know not necessarily most of the listeners are content producers, but I imagine you are the same way as me. Like I take pride in my content in that I'm doing it like I don't just go put picks and stuff out there, right? Just like you do. I'm not just like people ask me who to play and I tell them, and not knocking people that have like picks style stuff, but that's just not how. So I take pride in like when I'm putting out, like I put out an NBA article before we did this show, the new NBA piece that I'm doing, and I'm being thoughtful about like this is literally what's inside my brain for how I'm strategizing a tournament slate. And so what goes hand in hand with that is being successful, right? In tournaments, and the way to judge whether you're being successful. We could sit here all day and be like, yeah, I feel good about, and we did, frankly, during NFL, right? I lost like 5 weeks in a row, and every week we came on and I'm like, I don't know, I felt good, maybe it wasn't perfect, but I felt pretty good about my process. But you lose and it doesn't really matter. We're judged at the end of the day by whether we're winning or not. It's a win or lose game. And like you take pride in the fact that like, look, people are listening to me, and like I really appreciate the fact that people are listening to what I have to say. I don't consider myself an expert, but I'm just, putting out there what's in my head and things that I've learned from other people. So I want to be able to put it into practice and use it to make money, because that's like, why would anyone listen to me if I'm not able to put it in to practice and profit from it? So it is tricky, and it's something. So I haven't run my own roto tracker, but I can give my kind of story. So I don't have like the specifics on the exact numbers, but kind of like you went through your story, I can do the same thing. And it's really kind of funny. Last year, so not 2020, 2019, so whatever, last year, 2 years ago, whatever you want to call it, was my best DFS year I had ever had. I made about 250,000, mostly buoyed by NFL. But like I just honestly ran hotter than the sun. Like you really couldn't run hotter than I did in a year. I think I made the live final for every sport. Like literally, like you're just when you make it. I didn't do well at the live finals, but like binking at the 10 Qs in a year, like that's like you just have to run so pure. Shipped multiple NFL tournaments, like profited in every sport. Like it just that no matter how good of a player you are, that doesn't happen really. Like sometimes you just run good. So I had that. And then coming into 2020, so you're puffing your chest out, right? Coming early 2020, I had a very similar experience, I think, to you with NBA. I had been having a decent year. I just came off the best NFL season I had ever had. Got a little more money in your pocket, and you're making NBA teams. And I was donking money off left and right when NBA first started, from January up until early March. I was probably just honestly a horrible player, and not really realizing it, and probably then doing what we talk about on here, avoid, like we shouldn't be doing, in that I'm compounding my mistakes. I was then probably getting too cute, or vice versa, then getting the opposite, and just really making terrible teams. And then Rudy Gobert night hits, and that was my single day biggest DFS score I had ever had on the night, ironically, that Rudy Gobert shut the world down, right? Which I benefited from, oddly enough. Not that people necessarily want to hear this, but it was such a crazy night. We got word that Rudy Gobert, was having the issues. We barely knew about what COVID was at the time, but we knew of it a little bit. And then we got word that Gobert was potentially having COVID issues. And so everybody swapped to Tony Bradley was the backup center at the time for the Jazz. And he's, like min price and just literally a total free square if Gobert's out. So everybody swaps to him, but it was also a Boban night. And people didn't double pay down at center. Everybody, I don't remember who they played, but anyway, so I had Boban and Tony Bradley, and then the Jazz game gets canceled and people had other players in that game and I didn't. So I have a 0, but like the field has like multiple zeros. And so I was in first, and pretty certain that I was going to fall out of first in a couple tournaments because there was multiple night games. There was the Gobert game, and then there was, I think, a Kings game or something. They ended, so Gobert shut down the Jazz game, so everybody there got zeros. And then there was another game after that, and Silver shut that game. Adam Silver shut that game down too. So like I was gonna fall, tons of teams were gonna pass me, I think, and I end up, still sitting in first. So it was one of the wilder nights I had ever had. But I went from the best NFL season I'd ever had, right? Best year, 2019 was just pure run good. And then, like you said, the NBA starts and I'm just donking it off for months. And then I go back, right? And then you get that hit, 200,000. And then sports shut down. So then it's like, well, I guess luckily I can't donk it off too much here. And then we were away from sports and baseball came back. Baseball was the first sport. And honestly, this past year is probably the worst baseball season I had ever had. I don't even remember winning a slate. I'm sure there was some in there where I made money, but I don't remember. I remember losing pretty much every night. By the end of it, I stopped playing, and I love baseball and I love like the strategy around baseball DFS, but even earlier, like I don't play usually the last like week or something. I shut it down pretty early because I was just getting my ass kicked. Got a little bit. So, up 2019, way down from beginning of NBA, way back up, and then way back down in MLB. And then this NFL season was really bad. Like the opposite of last year. Lost. I don't know how much money, but I won maybe 3 weeks out of the entire 17 week season. Had a couple of decent sweats. Week 2 actually was my biggest sweat, but the ball just didn't bounce that way. So I made like 15,000 that week, and it just didn't cover everything for the whole year. When a little bounce my way, right, is a big difference. Like you said, if 1 or 2 cash weeks go your different way for your season, we're talking about a 30K swing. Same thing for this. If a ball bounces my way in that week 2, maybe we're talking a very different story. But instead, I have my first losing NFL year in a while and my worst NFL year in quite a while. Now, end of the year, NBA's back. And so far, this 2020-2021 NBA season has been really good. Shipped a couple of the smaller field, higher dollar tournaments. So, but just goes to say, I don't have the exact specifics on how number wise it has gone, but my entire year has 100% been buoyed by one day in NBA that, the last day of last year's regular season with the Rudy Gobert night. But the rest of the year has just been a gigantic roller coaster of, okay, hit that one huge night and then losing. And then maybe you bounce back for a little bit here and then losing. And now NBA so far, luckily, knock on wood, has been, getting me back some of the NFL losses. But that's just how it's been a total roller coaster that I don't think people can really quite understand. Like they see, oh, you said, oh, you won 50,000, or oh, you won 100,000, or oh, you won 200,000. Man, you must have just made so much money. And like, I guess sometimes that's kind of true, but you don't realize, all the ups and downs that go into it. And in a year, like you said, you're expecting to extrapolate this edge over a slate every day for the entire year. And in such a weird year like 2020, we had months of nothing. I didn't play DFS for months. Like you tried something else that maybe you had an edge at, maybe you didn't have an edge at, and either way, you weren't able to realize your edge over a large enough sample there during the summer of this year. It's just there's a lot that goes into all of this that I think it's important that people realize that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, even when you're a winning player, right? You're a winning player. You've been a winning player over years, and you were a profitable player again this year. I was a profitable player again this year, but like it's basically it was one day, right?
But when you play GPPs, that is what it is. I mean, Neil Orfield on Twitter recently posted a bunch of his screens. I like the fact that people are being more transparent, so people are aware of this stuff. Like people think that good players win every day, right? I mean, it's like it's the marketing of it. Like it's easy to sell that, but that's not that is not the reality. It's like sports bet. If someone said to you they could beat sides and totals and NFL spreads at an 80% rate, they're a liar. There's no way to do that. And if you believe that, you're the gullible one. You deserve to lose your money, right? But in DFS, it works the same way. If anyone says that they have a 5-year sample size and a win rate in double ups of 73%, they're lying. Like no one has that. That doesn't exist. And it's going to be around 60-ish, right? If you're good, right? At the lower stakes, maybe you get up to 65, 66, something like that. But no one talks about the real stuff. So this is the real stuff. You could have a bad year. Neil Orfield posted some of his stuff, and because he won the million this year, right? Like he won $1 million, but he came from the approach of, well, if I take away the $1 million, like I'm a losing player. Like I've lost some, like he's looking at it like he almost feels awful for winning the $1 million because it's like, well, yes, I do. Like I'm building lineups to win $1 million. Of course, it's going to take me God knows how long in order to get the one that does. But like he understands that that's why he's playing. Yes, so it's going to come. He said in 3 big spikes make up his entire profit of his entire DFS career. It's like, well, that's your goal of that's what you're playing. That's what it is. But from a stability standpoint, it's awful, right? From you can't count on, like there's nothing, like you could have a completely bad year and it be normal. You could have a completely bad 2 years and it be normal. You could have a great 1 year that makes up for everything and then some, and you could have the worst variance in the rest of your life and never lose enough money for that, right? So these years, this is what I mean by arbitrary periods, don't mean much. But then you have to reevaluate based on the goals that you have on your financial goals as well as your mental goals on what the best path is for you. And when we talk about contest selection, there's no such thing as better, right? What contest should I play? Well, it depends on who you are, what your strengths are, what your goals are, what everything is. Because if you're not a good player, it doesn't matter what your contest selection is. You don't have an edge. You're gonna lose. That from a contest selection standpoint, am I better off sacrificing EV in order to increase the stability of my results? So, for instance, like I said, I focus a lot on large field GPPs, which means it's like I need a bink or two a year in order to be profitable because I'm gonna bleed away money for most of the year, except for the couple of days where it's a lot. I always say that the highest edge you have is in the large field GPPs because it's just the sheer amount of dead money, and it makes up, and it's a higher rake, but I think that there's enough dead money to make up for the rake as it is. The problem is that realizing your EV in large field contests, like Over 40 years, sure, great. I mean, but am I going to be alive in 40 years? Who knows? Uh, so from a year-to-year basis, if I'm relying on this as income to some extent, I mean, I have a sizable bankroll. I'm fine. I'm doing well off. I have no problem whatsoever. Would it be better to play like you play, or at least in the middle ground of instead of like tonight in NBA, it's a 5 game slate, so it's easier on shorter slates than on like 11 game slates. Where instead of me playing 20 in the $4.20 max, 30 lineups in the $20 150 max, like the $8 the excellent eights, maybe play 10 lineups into that for 10K, 20K to first, and build and make a 60 to 80 lineup build, something like that. Uh, I'm just gonna make 5 lineups. I have one in the 250, whatever. There's a 4 max 250 with like
That's a great
15,000 to
contest, by
first.
the way.
What?
For anybody listening, if you're trying to move up a little bit in stakes and doing exactly what you're talking about, Jordan, that 250 that they'll run, that 4 max or whatever,
Yeah, it's a nice
is
flat payout structure.
It's a really great contest. Yeah.
Right. It's only like 400 entries or something, 450. And then I like yesterday I played the 333, which is like I think it's like 16 max, but it's still a small field contest.
Mm-hmm.
It's but that's like 50,000. So it's a little bit top heavy, but like I'll play, but it's less than 1,000 people in the field. I mean, like these contests that I'm looking at, I'm going, okay, how about the $100? Like there's a $100 NBA single entry with like 10,000 a first, and there's like 1,200 in there. Like I'm looking at those going, okay, instead of me building 80 lineups, let me be a little bit more like Eric and go like, let me dial in what I believe the best strategy is, and just go take a stand on that, and just go, I'm gonna get leverage off of this. I'm gonna build, so if this outcome happens, I have a good shot at winning one of these things. Right? I'm not playing one lineup into all 5 contests. I'm playing 5 different lineups. So it's like, okay, I'm going to build 3 for this and 2 for that. It's the same thing I would do when I build 80 lineups, 100 lineups. But now in 80, 100 lineups, I'm like, I'm going to try these like 14 different outcomes, right? And hopefully one of them gets there. Now it's like, I need to pare it down to like 2 or 3 and then build those lineups. And only because I'd never really focused on single entry and 3 max. So maybe this is, I don't want to call it a wake-up call, but I think like Neil Orfield even said on Twitter, like he was looking into the same type of thing. Like maybe I need to, instead of having to come into a year going, I hope I bink, right? Hopefully it comes soon so I don't have to sweat it out until October, right? In order to turn a profit, that maybe give up some of that edge. Maybe in these contests I don't have an edge. Maybe the fields are sharp enough that maybe I find that it maybe would be better for me to focus on my strengths and play large field contests and just wait for a bink. But I also noticed in just study, because in the past couple of days I've studied in Results DB, like those smaller field contests. Maybe not as small as you play, but at least, the 250, like the 4 max type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, like in these contests, for the most part, you don't have to worry. For the most part, you don't have to worry about you don't have to worry about Isaiah McKenzie.
Exactly.
Right? You like some of these real outlier stuff that like you almost, as long as they're 1% owned, you may be needed in a large field GPP. It feels very similar to how I play soccer. Like I normally, like the soccer contests are small enough that when I play like the 160 man 275 or something, whatever it is, 130 man, if some random underdog center back scores, it's quite possible no one has him. So it's like I don't have to think in those terms anymore. I could think in a kind of a normal contrarian standpoint and not like super contrarian standpoint. It's just that I need to get the balance. I can admit that since I never focused on those contests, that my lineup style does maybe a little too much, a little too little, like this. But the only way that I could get better at that is to work at it. I mean, that's like there's no other way for me to get better at that than doing it. So that's why I while on larger slates, I'm still too tempted. When there's 11 games and like there's 80 fucking leverage points, My mouth waters. My mouth waters going, Luke is going to be 3% owned. Holy shit. Like, how do I not build 20 lineups with Luka in him? Oh my God, Jimmy Butler in the small forward spot, he's going to be 3% owned. How do I not? Embiid on a slate where everyone's paying down at center, he's going to be 5% owned. Like, I can't make 3 lineups in that case. I'm sorry, Eric. I can't.
Yeah.
It's like going to a buffet of leverage, and it's like, no, I got to get more plates. Like, but on the maybe on the smaller slates, 5, 7, something like that. Maybe those are the days. Like today, I focus on I'm doing single entry 3-mech style. Really dial it in and then work on those, and because it seems like I'm more likely I could play the same amount of volume, and I'm more likely to at least get some of my equity back more often. That my swings won't be as dramatic as they are. And I'm saying this, and I play a conservative percentage of my bankroll. So most sharper players look at my overall lifetime graph and go, "Where are the swings?" And to me, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I had 2 fucking $25,000, $30,000. To me, that's a big fucking swing. And then they'll show me their graph and go, like Crocodile Dundee, you think that's a knife? This is a knife. And I go, wow, in comparison to a lot of other sharper players, they're going through hundreds of thousands of dollars of swings and eventually getting back up. And whatever, FJ Bourne posted his graph. He had a horrible NFL season until one day, right? It was all, and the one day got him back to even.
Even, yeah.
Right, just to get him back to even right then. So I'm using this as a teaching tool for both, obviously, the listeners of the podcast. And on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, obviously. But also as a teaching tool to me of maybe I need to work on more aspects of my game. Maybe 6 months later I go, it's baseball time. I'm stacking the Pirates every day. Let's go large field. Fuck it. That's my bread and butter. I'm going to lose 90% of the time, but I'm going to bink 2 or 3 times a year with a garbage fucking vomit stack. But in the time being, to me, there's no harm. I have to get over, Eric, the FOMO. To me, that's the urge. The FOMO of I see that $20 large field contest with 100,000 a first going, I could easily build 40 entries into this. That are leveraged well enough for that to be plus EV in this contest. Maybe today's the day where today's my bink, and because I didn't enter it and I played the 250 4-max. And I get almost it's one of those slates where you get the strategy completely right, but you only had 1 lineup or 3 lineups. It's if I had 40 lineups, I would have been I had exactly the right direction. I just needed a little bit more combinations. And then you look at that large field contest and go, if I had 80 lineups, I would have fucking won this motherfucker. That's the thing that I have to get over.
See, and that's so there's a few different things. That one is, maybe it's just I don't know if I'm not born with that one, or it's just I've played this way for so long now that I think it might just be kind of ingrained in my brain that I don't really experience that. Everybody experiences a little bit of kind of that, right? I built, I nailed this slate. If I just had the right 2v2, I would have won it. Again, not to keep saying that same thing. We're all human. You think about
but
that.
See, I don't get that. See, a lot of people get that. I don't get. I see. My biggest tilt, quote unquote tilt, is if I played a certain on an NBA slate. If I played double center, did this and whatever, and then LeBron goes off for 70 points, and I don't have him at all. I'm not upset at that. There was no chance this slate I was going to win. It's the slates where I build 60 lineups, and the winning lineup is literally in my play. I could have built this this lineup could have happened to be in my build. It's just because of my unique. It's just that 2v2 out of some of these combinations. Just didn't have. I just didn't happen to have that one lineup. So one of my lineups came in 12th. Right. I typically have a good day those days because I get the right players, the right leverage spots, but I just don't have that one combination. But the guys were in my pool. If the winning lineup has a guy that's either in my pool or that's not in my pool, or has some type of negative correlation that I grouped out. Like that I wasn't going to play. I wasn't going to play Bagley and Holmes together. I wasn't going to play, I wasn't going to play Kyrie and Durant together. Like I wasn't going to play LeBron and AD together. And for some odd reason, the game went to double overtime and LeBron and AD both have 70 points. Like I could look at that and go, well, I wasn't going to win this slate no matter what I did, because I never would have made that decision. It's the slates. It's the FOMO slates of it was just so close. There was one slate 2 seasons ago in NFL. I think I built the Millie Maker winning lineup and I switched off of it. Like that, I still think about. No, I'm not talking about late swap. I'm talking about when I built the lineups. So I'm building 100 lineups, 120 lineups for NFL, and then that was a slate where Sony Michel was ruled out. So there was like Rex Burkhead came into play. And then I'm switching a lot of my lineups to get Burkhead in manually, because it's like right before it's 90 minutes at inactives. So I already have everything built. So it's now like, well, I'm gonna start removing my Philip Lindsay exposure, because he was a cheap running back at the time, and then play Rex Burkhead instead. And then I stacked Daniel Jones that slate, and that was a slate Daniel Jones had like 42 points. Like the Giants, that vomit stack went off completely, and I built like some lineups that had both Burkhead and Lindsay in it, and that was also a slate where Lindsay had like 34 points. So like the double cheap running back build. Like I literally had, I'm literally staring. It's like 12:30. It's a half an hour before. I believe I'm staring at the lineup that like the Millie, and I was playing the Millie, and this lineup would have been in the Millie, and I'm staring at a lineup that the Millie winner had like 267. Well, this lineup that I was staring at a half an hour before, as part of my 100 lineup build, would have scored 272. And would have been in the Millie. But because I'm switching out stuff and I'm going, well, if I'm going to play this, I ended up having an extra $100 in the lineup.
Oh no.
So I moved up to the better one. Like I don't need leverage. So like the wide receiver that was like 6,300 was the leverage wide receiver, but 6,400 was like the chalky guy that was going to be owned. So I'm like, well, why not play the better projected play, since no one's going to be playing this lineup construction? So I changed to the $6,400 guy. The guy puts up like 18 points, but the other guy puts up, 29 points. And I'm like, and I see it play out, and I'm like, I swear to God, for the next couple of days, I'm like, I think I had the Millie. I think I literally had it. I think I literally fucking had it. But no one talks about those types of switches. Like, it's not a thing where, like, I'm not like you. I'm not building one lineup. I'm going through lineup by line. I would have never thought of specific, like, I'm just like, I need to get Burkhead in. I'm going to get him in here, getting in here, getting in here, getting in here, and then I'm like, oh, now I can make these 2 cheap running back constructions. So now I'm looking for Lindsay lineups that I could switch out the other running back. So I'm like, I could switch out the other running back and then move up somewhere. And then I moved up to that $6,400 chalky guy, where I was also playing a $300 guy that was in other lineups. And I'm like, I think I had the fucking line. That's the FOMO of not playing large field GPPs of this 250 GPP, first place is 15,000. And it's much easier to win because you're up against 400, 500 entries. And it's probably easier to cash. I mean, against other sharp, I'm saying the word easy. It's not easy. It's just that it's more probable. That's a better way of putting it. You're playing against much better players. You're playing against the average EV of a lineup is going to be much higher. There's less dead money in there. But the thought of like, oh, well, I could win 15,000 getting it right is so much less than if I get it right, I could win 100,000. But I mean, it's fucked up for me to say. I'm speaking like a casual player. Like, I know in my head, intellectually, that why am I? This is how DraftKings gets people to enter the $20 Millie Maker. They see the first place of $1 million, second place is 100,000, fifth place is a set of fucking steak knives, and they're like, no, I could win $1 million. Like, I should not be thinking this way. But I need to get more cognizant of that. I think, to me, it seems like this episode is me just, it feels like I'm on the couch with a psychologist. going,
Back with the-
going here are my flaws, and also just to the fact of like, dude, maybe I'm human too. Maybe I don't do everything perfectly. I never claimed to. Here are the
Yeah.
concepts. Use them the best you can. I believe I could do them better than you, but I also believe that there are 100 people that do them better than me. So like it's not a like every people ask me why did you enter this contest and that thing, and I go because I pressed the fucking ran button in Excel and it just happened to be in there. I mean, just it. Sometimes it's 5 minutes before lock, and you're just like, I just need to get a CSV in, and fuck it, this is the build. And it's like, I guess I'm playing 60% Cam Reddish today. Like that. So someone will ask, like, why'd you have so much Cam Reddish? What did you see in Cam Reddish? Right? And sometimes, like, he'll put up 8 points, and I'm like, wow, you sucked yesterday. You had 60% Cam Reddish. I was like, dude, I didn't like any other small forwards, and it was 658, and I couldn't find any other builds to make it that way. So fuck it, I have a lot of Cam Reddish. Like that. Truthfully, that's the answer. That's a lot of times that is the answer. There's no some supreme thing. It's just like you're gonna do it as much as you can, as best as you can, and then at some point you just have to say fuck it. And it is what it is. We see top MME guys sometimes. You go, why did Moklovin put in 150 of the same entry, and with an injured player 100? Like, no, he fucked up his CSV upload. He forgot to wake up. I mean, like even shit like that happens. So let alone of like one guy. I mean, I was looking at NBA Slay yesterday. Like there was some sharp player at like 73% Bacon, Dwayne Bacon in their lineup, and I'm like I know we were hard off for small forwards yesterday, but 73 out of you played him in like fucking 90 of your lineups. Like was there like if you ask what the reason is, they would say pretty much the same thing as me. It's like, dude, small forward sucked, and just he was the only guy that fucking fit. So I'm just like, fuck it. I'm living on bacon today.
Yeah, it's there's so much, but I thought I'm really happy that you brought up Neil's thing. Going back to Neil. So I hadn't seen that he posted some of this stuff, but I actually feel really similarly to him. You know, it was a much smaller win that I had. It was not the milli that I had this past year, but that was the thing. You know, I had one really big day, and it was in March. You know, and then you're just like either losing or trying to get unstuck, setting aside that one day. And it is like, you know, I'm not trying to, you know, woe is me, but it can be mentally taxing. Like you said, this knowing that you need to bink, right? To like the down, like, so what you outlined, but in a little bit different way for me because of the contest that I'm playing. But okay, have your great day, and that's all well and good. But like as a player, you want to keep winning, right? You have it in the back of your mind, like, okay, great. Look, I won. I built up my bankroll. If I lose for a little while, it's okay. But like still after losing stretches and you just keep going down and down and down and down, right? That still has an impact on you, you know, like you try to continue to make really good teams, but if you lose for a month or 2 months or 3 months or whatever, or then, yeah, you know, we get baseball back. That was a big thing for me. I think I really struggled when we got baseball back because I did not play any of these other sports when we were, you know, I was smelling the roses, as Levitan would say, during that, and then baseball came back, and I'm like, all right, baby, it's back. You know, we're gonna crush. I got this bigger bankroll now, and it was like, you know, like I said, the worst MLB season that I've ever had, and I don't know if it like impacted my play. I haven't like gone back and looked at it, but I do think trying to not be buoyed by the like mental aspect of I need to bink twice this year, right? I need to win $100,000 twice this year. Is something that I think is interesting that he was posting about. And I think to your point, moving away a little bit from the lottos into the stuff like that, that, you know, like you said, single entry 3 max, certain field sizes, I think people like, well, it's easy to just call it like, oh, you just play single entry stuff. Like that's kind of true, but I think it's a lot more about field size for me than it is about how many entries people can have into it. I don't really care if my opponents have multiple entries, whether it's 3 max, 5 max, or like you said, maybe it was that they could get 16 into it, right? I don't really care if my opponents can get 16 into it. It's way more about the field size. I want to be playing against fewer lineups as opposed to I want everyone's best lineup. So anyway, I think you can leverage playing in these contests to make you a better large field player, especially with the mindset that you've kind of just outlined, that maybe you want to hone in on that balancing act, because it's a really difficult balancing act. I struggle with it every day. I think I screwed it up like last night. I think I screw it up probably more than I care to admit, of how do I get leverage? How do I play smart plus EV teams that are, not too chalky, but not my, because I tend to get galaxy brained. That's kind of that's just like how I'm wired, is to be a little bit out there, a little bit too crazy. And so that balancing act of figuring all that out is tough. It's really tough. And I think what helps me is the contest that I play in, knowing I don't have to have Isaiah McKenzie, right? Or whoever, right? If the backup point guard for the Knicks, right, happens to play 25 minutes and shoots 10 for 12 tonight, like I don't care, because no one's going to play him. And even if someone did play that guy, if you're playing him in the contest that I'm in, there's a decent chance you probably have like some other plus or some other minus EV plays in there. So it does, I think, being able to hone in on the strategy for these contests both helps with some of these mental aspects, but I also think it can help, like you talked about last week, sometimes simplification, right? Simplification instead of complication. I think playing in these contests can help simplify an approach, and you can, in my opinion, almost always go back to okay, how do I play these large fields, right? How do I attack all these different leverage points? But it's much more difficult to come the opposite direction, because I've been solely playing in these smaller field contests for years now, and I still struggle with the simplification aspect of it, because I'm a naturally galaxy brained psychopath. But it's much easier to take, to me, if you're a serious and at least competent GPP player, it's much easier to go from the simple approach to the galaxy brain approach than it is having this crazy galaxy brain. Oh, I love all these leverage spots, I love all these 1% guys, to come back and then play this 400 man contest where it's like, dude, you really don't need to be playing like 3 different leverage spots and 5 guys under 3%, so that, I think, it has helped me, and I actually think it could be a really useful tool, for someone like you or lots of other people, even if it's like for a really short stretch, and even if you don't win necessarily. But I think just the thought process of doing 1 to 3 to 5 to 10 teams, as opposed to 150 or somewhere around there, can help, going back to last week's, simplify the process, and just kind of help you hone in on those. Again, another key phrase, right? The core competencies of building these tournament teams, and then you can extend it. You can always go back to playing multiple teams, but really honing in on that like really core strategy of a tournament lineup.
Right. I mean, it's very similar to what I tell people with optimizers. Like I used to hand build. I made, like, just look at what I did on NFL Sunday. I hand built 30 lineups. Right. I didn't use an optimizer for 30 lineups because I understand lineup construction dynamics. So like the optimizer to me is just an efficiency tool. So like I'm not using it to make my decisions. So even if you're looking to get better so you can build by using an optimizer, playing single entry 3 max or playing just a handful of lineups, you could play 5 lineups into a large field GPP. You can do that. And then hand building it, that'll teach you how to make the optimizer think like you. So to me it's the same exact thing. But the fact that like I see a lot of people, a lot of sharp players that are making. I don't want to see the thing. It's hard, Eric. It's hard for me to balance in my head that if my choice should always be from a pure EV perspective to play in the weakest fields.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, picture in poker the difference between you're going to play a 3,000 player tournament. You play like the WSOP main event. 3,000, 4,000 people, and 1,000 of them have almost no chance of winning. Like $10,000, and it's an experience, and these are horrible players. And plenty of, and then a ton of sharp players, but you still have like a quarter of the people that are playing this tournament, like unless they get hit with the deck, they ain't going to be at the final table. And then you think in terms of, oh, well, either that or do I play a 5 or 6 table? You know, we're talking about the 60 people, but 54 of them are what would be within reason of you, right?
Yep.
You may be a little bit better than some of them. They may be a little bit better than you, but like there may be 6 people in here that are like, yeah, we're not going to see you again. Like you're going to play the century, and unless you get really lucky, you're not going to win. Like to me, the first one is the one with like that's the higher EV spot. The problem is that like you're gonna have to play event. You're gonna have to lose 51 out of 52 calendar weeks before. I mean, like there are plenty of great poker players that never won the World Series of Poker main event. I mean and they never will. You know, Phil Ivey's never won the World Series of Poker main event. You know, most likely he won't be. Then how could you say you're the best player in the world? It's like it's those things in the back of your head, of like it's those things when people come into my streams. It's a societal thing. I mean, a lot of the societal stuff I don't give a fuck about. I mean, like that's just my personality. I don't small talk. I don't fucking do any of these niceties that most people in society do, as it is. But it's those things where I'm doing a stream on Saturday, and someone will ask if I ever won the Millie Maker, and then like that, as if they're judging me by, well, why should I listen to you because you've never won the Millie? If you were so good, why didn't you win the Millie Maker? It's like, dude, it's a 200,000. Like intellectually, both me and you, like, dude, Awesome's never won the Millie Maker. I mean, like, you know
That's
how
what I was
hard
gonna
it
say,
is
yeah.
to win the goddamn Millie Maker? I mean, like, you could be the best player and never win. And you can play for 50 years and never win. So, like it's that thing in the back of my head of like most people don't transparently show their results. Right? I've done it every year. And people are like, oh, people appreciate it to see how real it is. And then this year is the type of year where it's like in the back of my head are people going to think less of me because I didn't have a good year? I still had a profitable year. I mean, but people are going to look and go, dude, you only made $7,000 playing DFS? Like, what the fuck? Like, that's in the back. Like, I know that this is like, you could take a look at I've talked to other sharper players. There are people that right now, most people in the audience will go, wow, that guy's a great player. And I know in 2018, they lost $600,000. Right? Now in 2019, they won 1.1 million. So like it ended up coming back up. But like in one calendar year, they lost $500,000. And you don't know this because they don't share any of this, that everyone thinks of them as a great player. It's like, well, because they're still over the past 7 years, they've won over $2 million. I mean, like that's the arbitrary period type of thing. So like in the back of my head, like it makes me feel ashamed. But I know intellectually that I shouldn't be. I feel like there's 5% of the audience. I'm assuming if you're watching this or listening to this, you get what variance is. You get these concepts. You've taken the course at least. You understand the math behind all of this. That 95% of you are like, no, I'm that they're experiencing the same thing. And maybe they have no one else to talk to because no one is transparent, and they're going, am I the loser? Like, am I doing this right? Am I like they're going, I had a great year last year, and then the year after that was like fucking horrible. And then they're like, well, I only lost $5,000 on $300,000 worth of volume. Like, did I just get lucky? I mean, am I a bad player? Am I doing this right? And I'm like, no, that's normal. Like this is normal. So even to myself, I have to say, like, no, this is normal. And then there's going to be 5% of the audience that is going to think, oh my God, this guy's a fraud. And then I just have to chalk up that if you think that, then you'll never get this. That's the part of the audience that, the predicting blowouts and fucking well, he always does well in a revenge game on Tuesdays. Like I'm never gonna this ain't the podcast for you. Like that, I'm just never gonna get that audience. I'm just like, those are the people that think that just you understand this, right? Those, like, I just have to. Those are the deplorables, right? You just have to throw them in a bucket and be like either you get it or you don't get it. Then just don't watch me. Then think whatever you want of me. Think whatever you want of Eric. Think whatever you want of the course. But if you don't get it, you don't get it. I can't stop that.
I think this has kind of all come full circle, actually, to me. Like, as you were talking about that, because I felt like, okay, we're trying to talk about our results and this weird situation that is the variance of DFS, and it's money, right? So, like, it's this weird thing to talk about the fact that there's these wild swings, and this weird thing to talk about, like, dude, I made money on like only a few days this entire year, and basically one day carries you, and like talking about all of that, you feel almost like it's a difficult thing to talk about. I don't mean difficult in like, like I don't feel comfortable. Difficult in that it's a weird human thing to discuss, like because it's not how the rest of like
it's not how the rest of the world.
Show,
imagine the rest of the world. Imagine talking to a normal person with a 9-to-5 job that says, "Well, last year I worked the same amount of time in the same place and I made $45,000, and then the next year and then I made $5,000." And be like, "Dude, what? Why didn't you leave? Like, why didn't you But if you're betting on sports, if you're a professional sports bettor, if you're a poker player, if you like it's the only job. It's one of the only jobs where you could go to work for a day and lose money, and go to work on a day and make 5 times as much as what you would normally make. I mean, like, it's that's why I said in the very beginning that these time periods are so arbitrary.
Yeah.
That it's just a human construct. So like, I shouldn't be staring at this number for 2020. I should be staring at the number that says lifetime.
Yep.
And I should be looking at lifetime 366 ROI 18.39 and doing the same thing. What we talked about, tilting. If once the last game of the slate locks, like, the slate is over, the results are, you could go to sleep. The same thing as your NBA season, right? It started out horrible, right? Your NBA season, Eric?
Yeah.
It started out horrible.
Sorry,
then
someone, it's perfect timing for how horrible, the NBA season was. Someone's trying to interrupt me.
Well, it was horrible until that one night, right?
Yep.
So if I would have told you that you have amnesia and you're going to play NBA between January 1st and March 6th, and on March 7th you're going to see how much you've won, you would have a number there that's in the 6 figures, right?
Yep.
And would I have to tell you, did it come out of you winning $1,000 a day or once or all in one? Does it even matter?
Nope.
No, it doesn't. But as a human being, we look at those things and go, that's why when I talk to people about GPP play, and like I come back to the Drew Dinkmeyer quote, and it's like, it's not about winning more often. It's about how much you make when you win. So, but human beings are more like, well, you only won 6% of your nights. You're a horrible player. It's like, well, this is how much money I've made. It doesn't matter that I've won 6% of the, like, human beings think in terms of like baseball teams and basketball teams. If a basketball team can't win the playoffs in one game in the third game of the season, right? Like whether or not, like, you can't carry over the points. The Warriors blew out the Kings. It's not like they could take the 40 points that they beat them by and carry them over to the next game, right? So a win is a win. It doesn't matter if it was by 1 point or whatever. But in DFS, that doesn't exist. It means a lot. Like, if you win first place on one day, like, you could go, it's like having a basketball team go 1-81 and win the NBA championship, right? That's so illogical to how the average person thinks. But if you're in poker, gambling, spheres, DFS, like, to us, it makes complete sense, because that's the notion of how you play, right?
Exactly. So that's like, as we were talking about it, like, you feel like, I don't know, I'm rambling. Am I describing this well? Because, like you said, it goes against all of, like, human nature. And like you said, all these human constructs that we've put in place, like, we are absolutely judging it like we judge a regular job and like a sports team. Like you said, okay, what happened this year? Well, that doesn't really, why does that matter? I could have lost, like you said, lost my ass for 365 days in 2020, and then 2021 turns around and what? I don't even know what today is, on the 5th, and I could have just smashed these few days, and I could be a millionaire or whatever, right? Like, it literally, what day it happens on, what year it happens on, it doesn't matter what this looks like, right? It could just look like this, and then this, and then, like, for long periods. None of that matters. It just is hard, even as someone who knows it. We talk about, the variance thing. We mention it most weeks, because it's really important, just how much variance there is, like in the nightly results of a DFS contest. Even you and I think, understand how crazy, like, the finances are of this game that we're playing, in terms of the swings, or in terms of, like you said, each of us basically were buoyed by a day, right? A night, a 4-hour period of time, like, through all of 2020, that made us, profitable DFS players. And that's just such a weird thing that even, like, people who understand it don't always totally wrap their head around. So I just think, even us talking about this and just having, like, a totally normal, casual conversation, maybe if, like, anybody out there can be like, I don't appreciate exactly how drastic it is, and maybe sometimes I let that impact my play. We started out this and have talked about different aspects of it, through different areas of this podcast, that at the beginning, we're talking about the tilt, right? Are you letting the tilt impact you? Dante Exum, shit. Now am I screwing up my teams, or is that carrying over into future days? Or, like you said, maybe I need to adjust my style of play and move into different contests. But there's also aspects of this losing, right? Which we've talked about on past episodes too, but, like, losing days in a row, weeks in a row, months in a row, having losing years, like, that can wear on you. But it's so different than the rest of your normal human life that it's easy to let it impact you. But you just have to be able to set that aside and judge it for what it is, which is this totally bizarre game that we're playing, that doesn't align with everything else that your brain is trying to compare it to.
Right, and but that's why I like being transparent.
Mm-hmm.
I like being transparent because this is the reality, and if people want to play seriously and they want to get into this, try it out. Not everyone is going to succeed. It's a zero-sum game. At least have realistic expectations, because so many times over the past 3 years, 4 years. I mean that I've been public on Twitter, doing shows, whatever. That so many people just have because why should they have realistic expectations? There's no one to set them. There's no one when Oh, you don't win more than 60% of your cash games? Like, that seems low. It's like, dude, if you're a sports bettor and you're 54%, you're God. Right? You don't like if you could that's why they play for a lot of money, right? Cuz you need to each if you could get a 54.2% and then that's why you're playing for $1 million a day and a lot of volume. But that's the same thing in DFS. So like without it being out there, you have such unrealistic expectations, and I think it turns people off. I think it turns the person that wants to play seriously off more so than that Joe Schmo. I'm going to throw $20 in and get rich quick, whatever. I'm never going to get them like that. I mean, that's the majority of people, but they're also not looking at. They're not going to Roto Grinders. They're not looking for this podcast. They're like whatever. But I'm hoping people that listen to the course, theoryofdfs.com, watch this podcast on YouTube, on iTunes, whatever. Like, even if they're not looking to be a professional, they're looking not to make it a primary part of their income. If I just want to be able to beat the games and say that I'm a profitable player, like, expectations need to be set. You can't have like teach me how to win the Millie Maker is not a request that's doable, right? That's not the way it works. So, but I can't blame people that have that because I'm on Twitter all the time. I get these emails. I see the Facebook ads and everything like that. Any content site and any DFS site, right? DraftKings, FanDuel, the $1 billion checks and the screenshots on like our subscriber just won $100,000. And that's all you see. It's the Instagramification of the DFS community, and truthfully, it sells. It's just the churn rate on that is going to be ridiculous because then once people get a hand fistful of reality, like it's hard. It makes it seem like everyone was duping you, right? That's what it makes it seem like. It makes it seem like when you see screenshots all over the place and I win all the time and beating my chest and here's we have 500 subscribers and they're all making bank and here's the prop bets that we won today and all that type of stuff that to someone that is not studied, that is not serious enough, like that. You're seeing the person's best day on Instagram, and you're not seeing, the mom having to deal with the kids vomiting in the bathroom and cleaning that up, and then the electric bill is late, and like you're not seeing any of that. And in order to play seriously, you have to see the whole fucking thing, right? You have to understand the good, the bad, what's realistic, because that's the only baseline you have to judge to it. The point in which I was the most transparent was back in 2016, because I was just playing soccer. I was listening to the RotoWire soccer podcast with Mike Gottlieb and Andrew Laird. This is before I ended up taking Gottlieb's place, because I was just playing soccer. But I didn't, and I was making money like 8 months in or whatever. I was like I was up like $8,000 or whatever. Where is it on the graph? Yeah, it was 15,000. Something like that. And I'm like, is this good? I don't like, because I know from poker, like what a good hourly rate for the bet size. Like I know all of that, but I don't know what to compare it to DFS. I joke around with people on Twitter, right? I joke around with the soccer people doing memes. We're making MLS jokes. It's such a niche thing that most people don't know me from the soccer stuff anymore. But then someone reached out to me, Evaldo Basso. He plays. He's a soccer regular. He's also like a CFO of a hedge fund, so he makes millions of dollars. So it's like he plays DFS just for the competition. He reached out and basically said like, this is what my Roto Tracker looks like. He considered me a good player, and I considered him a good player, and it was the first time that. Like, he wanted to see whether or not he was playing. Like, he was having the same exact thing in his head of like, I'm doing well in this, but is this good? Is is this out of the ordinary? Should I be like in these types of contests? So it was the first time that I got to see someone else's rotor tracker, and I saw, and we compared notes and said, "No, you're doing well. Okay, you're doing." And I'm like, okay, so I am on the right. Like, I'm not. My results aren't unreasonable. They're not like variance written. It's like, okay, there's someone else that I respect that's also beating the games in a similar way. He's taking a lot more high stakes head-to-heads than I am, or whatever. And then and he said to me, it's like he was up like over like the past 2 years, like 100,000 or something. And at that point, I was like 15,000. And he's like, and he said, you'll get there. Said he said you're gonna be you have $15,000 right now. I said you're gonna beat my hunt. At some point, you're going to pass me. And I'm at that point, I'm like, dude, that's gonna take forever, right? Because I'm playing $3 games, $1 games, stuff like that. Playing a couple $100 a slate, and then a year later, like I get to DM him and say, I think I passed you, right? A year and a half later, I'm like, I'm at $112,000, and then, but that was the point in which, like, I think it was useful for me to see someone else, the inside of someone else's results, so I have some baseline. I have no baseline, so I think it's helpful to have some type of baseline. So the more people that are transparent and share, it's not about showing how well you did. It's not showing how big your downswing was either to get pity or something like that. It's so more people see what a baseline is, so then they could look and see, I'm winning 58% of my head-to-heads. That ain't that bad, right? It's not as good as this guy who's winning 60%, but hey, it's close enough. It's not that bad. Oh, my finishing positions in a top 1% finishes. Like, I'm at 1.3%, but I see that these guys are at 1.5%. But I mean, okay, I'm in the range. Like, but you would never know what the range is. Some people would look and go, I think I need to get 3.5% in the top 1%. Like, dude, if you could do that, you'd have fucking $1 billion. So you'd be winning fucking all the time. Like, no one does that, right? But how would you know? It's very similar, Eric. I know this is completely different than DFS. By when I go to like the car mechanic or something, right? I don't know anything about cars. I don't know how much it costs to fix anything, but you want an estimate, right? You try, like, it's not a matter, like, so when a car mechanic says, I could get this done in a day, it's pretty easy to fix. And I'm like, well, how much is it? And then sometimes they don't know. It's like, well, it depends if we need a part, and it depends on if this doesn't work, I need to put 4 more hours into it. It's like, dude, I know nothing about this. Is this $2,000 or $200? Like, to me, that's a drastic difference. And then they go, no, this will be like $150 to $200. Like worst case scenario, it'll be $300. Best case scenario, it'll be $80. I'm like, okay, that's all I need to know. Like, I don't want to tell you to do it and then you come back and say it's $2,000 because I just have no baseline on what you need to do with this. So give me that baseline. If I'm at the dentist's office and I say, how long does it take? Like, I know you don't know the exact number, but I've never gone through this procedure before. Is this a 10-minute procedure or a 2-hour procedure? Just give me some type of baseline. So to me, that's the reason why I do it, because it was helpful for me 4 years ago. And I hope that it's helpful, good or bad, whether or not it's based on my play, that it would be helpful to someone like you, Eric, or to anyone starting out long term. And I think that's what starts a lot of, like, Justin Herzig. He also posted some of his results on Twitter. That, to me, it's not a matter of selling. Like, it's not a lot. Oh, what is your tout? What is their results? I mean, I think you should show that also, but I just think it's helpful for other players to have some type of baseline, so either they could judge how well they're doing, and also just to make sure you're not going fucking crazy. I'm not sitting here going, well, I had a bad year. Well, who else? That's why I talked to some other players for NFL. I said, did you have a bad year? And they go, yeah, I had a bad year. I'm like, did you have a bad season? Yeah, I had a bad season. So now I don't feel that bad about having a bad, like there's 5 or 6 other people that I respect that were profitable NFL in 2019, 2018, 2017, just like I was profitable in those years also. And I'm like, did you have a bad season? Yes, yeah, I'm down. Did you have a bad season? Yeah, I'm down. Like, but no one wants to say that because, like, it's no one puts their bad pictures on Instagram.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, you gave your soccer example to just understand, like, yeah, I know I'm making money, but am I doing well? But I think even more so, which you outline well, and others have too. Maybe even like on like the FJ Bournes. It's nice to see those people. Like, I think it's great that those people put that kind of thing out there, but it might even be almost a little bit too drastic for like the casual user, because they're like, look, this, like, it's not even in the same stratosphere as what a casual player is playing. So they're like, yeah, this guy lost so much, but how much money does he have to be losing that much? Like, I kind of think more people like you and I, maybe we're playing more than the average person, but we're not on we're not on the level of those guys playing, hundreds of thousands of dollars and going through $500,000 downswings, and it's not really impacting you. If I went through a $500,000 downswing, we probably wouldn't be doing this podcast.
I'd be broke. I'd be
anymore.
broke.
Yeah, exactly. But being able to see other people that are similar to you and see the negative side of things. Like you said, it's so easy to understand the positive side of things, right? Like, okay, you won a tournament, like, cool, I see the screenshot or whatever. But the negative side of things, like, just like you said, did you win at NFL? Because I lost,
Right.
like last year, like I feel shitty about it, and like, it doesn't feel comfortable. Like, last year is like, it was a print fest. Like, I could puff my chest around and talk to anybody on Twitter, and feel good about myself. And this year it's like, fuck, I'm writing articles every week and I'm losing. And, like, I lost money at NFL.
Yeah, but a
this year.
17-week season, that's like 2.5 weeks in NBA. Like,
Right.
I've gone
But
on 2.5-week NBA downswings like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, but being able to say that, and like other people say that, and we're talking about it on here, and then we're talking about all this other context, right? It's like, okay, look, I still believe I am and can be a successful NFL DFS player. I just didn't happen to win in this 17 weeks, right? That doesn't like, it doesn't even really matter, right? And I'm playing other sports, and so, like, there's all these variables to this bizarre fucking game that we're playing, but
But it's
for the millionth
it's that
time,
but it's that human
human
thing,
aspect,
right? It's
yeah.
that it's especially like we see this all the time, right? Two people get into a beef on Twitter, right? I mean, you see it in poker also. Heads up for rolls, right?
Yes.
Two people get into a beef. It's like, I'll play tonight. I'm gonna play you heads up for $5,000, as if one slate will determine. Right? I mean, like, imagine determining the World Series by the first pitch, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, truthfully, it doesn't. One slate. Who gives a shit about one slate? That's why these head-to-head challenges. I don't give a fuck. I post my head-to-heads in the lobby. Feel free to take them. And then if you want to beat your chest, I beat you tonight. Like, what do I care? Like, I'll go into my head-to-head on Roto Tracker and go, let me take a look at how I've done against you for the whatever, like that. And it's like, oh, great, you beat me tonight, but I have a 73% win rate against you in 41 head-to-heads. So keep on taking them. I don't give a fuck, right? But it's that human type of thing of like, well, we'll settle the score today in a game that has so much variance that you can't decide it on one day. Dude, I mean, that's not how this works. So
Yep.
I think that more that people are more ashamed to not be transparent, because I almost think that they think the audience is too stupid, which at some point I would agree with some of that. I'm just hoping that the audience that listen to this podcast is I tend to speak as if you're smart. Like, I think that's a better way. I don't want to pat myself on the back or anything like that, but I explain things and I talk about DFS in a way that I assume that my audience is smart. And if you don't get the fundamentals, like, I'm not going to dumb it down for you. So that's when it comes out. You're a fucking idiot. Stupid question. Play whoever you want. That's when that comes out, because it's like, I'm not gonna teach you 2 + 2 here. Like, we're past 2 +. If you can't get 2 + 2, I don't have time for you. Like I want to deal with the people that already get 2 + 2, and let's actually have an intellectual conversation. So that I think that's what it comes down to with the transparency of results of like people are afraid, especially if you're doing content. People are afraid to say I had a losing year because you think that the audience is dumb. That is going to go, well, if you had a losing year, why the fuck should I listen to you? Yep. And it's like, well, if I taught you anything, me personally, is that variance is a motherfucker, right? Keep calm and blame variance. That dude, there aren't enough slates that have ever happened in DFS and if you have a marginal plus or minus ROI in DFS, and you've literally played every slate since it began in 2010, you may still not know if you're a winning and a losing player. Like, that's how much variance there is. Obviously, if it's way high or way low, you're more likely to be a winning or a losing player. But if you're somewhere around plus or minus 5% or something, plus or minus 10%, like, dude, you could have played every slate in every sport for 10 fucking years and have a 7% ROI and be a losing player. And be negative 7% and still be a losing player. So I'm hoping that my audience is smart enough to realize that. So like the results of a 1-year arbitrary period don't matter. And I know that 5% of people, they're going to comment on YouTube, right? Some guy, someone's going to watch this. I mean, I don't know. They got to 2 hours and 10 minutes and eventually got to it and say, yeah, you're a horrible player. Ha, you've only won X amount of dollars and whatever. I can't listen to you. And then fuck them, right? Yep. Sometimes that's the best approach. Just say fuck it. Fuck them. Then if you're not going to get it, you're never going to get it.
Yep.
Well, if you want to get Erik on Twitter, Erik Beimfohr on Twitter, at BlenderHD on Twitter, feel free to share your results. If you have Rotor Tracker or something like that, just at reply. Or if you don't want to share it publicly, you could email. You could always take a screen capture or share this dashboard or whatever thing and submit it to questions@theoryofdfs.com. Because maybe some people don't know how to look at certain stuff, or maybe you just want to share it and say, can you tell me if this is good, right? Or what do you see in here that I should improve on? I'm more than happy to answer. So just like from 4 years ago, I had the person that I was able to see other people's results. Like, here's my results. If you want to show your results so we can compare, I'm more than happy to oblige to that. So for Erik, I'm Jordan Cooper. And this has been the Theory of DFS podcast. Go take the 15-hour audio DFS masterclass at theoryofdfs.com.